Charles, it's another remote Sunday with Charles. How are you?
Great to see you, Jason. Happy Mother's Day to you and to the mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers out there in our viewership.
Absolutely. Happy Mother's Day to you, Charles. I know you're not a mother, but you've got one. And whoops, what was that?
That's just the sound of an email hitting my device. Sorry for that.
Oh my God, that sounded quite alarming. Well, so Charles, how's everything there in New York?
Well, I'd say that New York is descending. It's not as far descending into anarchy as is California, where apparently some bunch of idiots in the legislature want to do away with the holiday for George Washington and Abraham Lincoln President's Day and instead start celebrating May Day in California.
Wow.
Yet another reason to give that state back to either Russia or Mexico.
Did Russia ever control California, Charles?
According to Sarah, no. Actually, there were settlements in parts of San Francisco, are I think called Russian Hill, and north of there, there were long-standing Russian trading settlements up and down the Pacific coast. So yeah, they didn't really control it, but they were trapping and exploring for
Wow, that's interesting. Like furs and stuff like that. I know Russians love to trap furs or trap animals and then make them into furs.
And of course, they owned. Actually, there were settlements.
Ooh, sorry about that.
So I know we're pressed for time and trying to keep this to the 90-minute goal. So if you like, Jason, I can jump right in by congratulating the art department again. We're on very short notice coming up with a winning movie poster. I guess we're off the poster page, but
no, we've got it. I've got lots of ways of bringing that up.
Alrighty, and it was a great movie. In doing some research into the movie, I discovered that I think the same people who brought us Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid brought us The Sting. And you can, now that I know that, I guess I could see some of that in my recollection of both movies. But really, the sting that we're dealing with, unfortunately, is a sting that the more we go over this, the more I'm convinced is a sting that is the whole concept of this new world order that was foisted on us starting by 1988, creation of the European megastate, and then this whole globalist attitude is one gigantic sting that enriches the connected globalists and their cronies, but in the main has made we the people here in this largest economy in the world worse off. And so that's kind of the larger context, but the focus of today's presentation is really on how it seems that Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and possibly others really attempted to sink the American governance process to a new and audacious low by, it seems, attempting to rig the 2015-2016 election, and when that didn't happen the right way, turning around and trying to overthrow President-elect Donald Trump and now President Trump. Yeah. I mean, that's the real story, I think, of what's going on here. It's not so much Russian collusion, or meddling by foreign powers in the it's meddling by globalist elites to try to make sure that their chosen candidate would sit atop this gigantic swamp that has been created in the last 30 years. And when it seemed like Donald Trump, I think when historians write about this in time, it's probably going to be the case that we'll get corroborating evidence that the smart guys and ladies in the Democratic Party really were rooting for Donald Trump to be the candidate because they felt they could most easily destroy him in the general election. Right. I think that's what we're going to find out. They were so smart, so wise. Yeah, we'll serve up Trump. Let's help Trump. In fact, we may even find, as the time passes and as Donald Trump gains and his administration gain control of the Justice Department, the IRS, et cetera, appropriate control, and get rid of these corrupt people who still are inside much of it. We may well find that's just it, that there was collusion. It was collusion with the Democrats to try to make sure, A, that Hillary was the nominee, and B, that Trump was the Republican nominee.
You know, Charles, it's funny. I've been getting a real taste of some of this globalism as I travel around. Of course, I was in Auckland just the other day where Hillary was celebrated on stage and speaking with a bunch of New Zealanders there. And then I was reading in the paper she's in Australia now. You look like they got her head strapped on with a scarf. She's like super stiff sitting there. I don't know what's going on, but I tweeted at Thomas Paine that she looks like Captain Pike. I don't know if you remember from Star Trek, there was that captain whose head was just in a box, and that's what Hillary looks like right now. But it's
Well, you know, of
beyond,
course,
beyond just the United States where this cabal is taking place. We've been hearing about how Canada and the CRA and New Zealand and Australia, and of course Downer was pivotal in all that stuff. So it's really interesting.
well, you see, what you happen to hit on there, I think, is that here the United States is indeed the largest unified market in the world, and it's also the wealthiest country in the world. So we have issues and opportunities that most nations just don't have. And if you're sitting out there, and I've never been to New Zealand or Australia, I'm sure they're both wonderful places, many lovely people there, but these are small markets. So if you've gotten to the end of your political career in New Zealand and Australia as prime minister or whatever it is there, what better thing to do than to support the Clintons in their and the Bushes for that matter, and Obama in these globalist ventures, where you go from being, the prime minister of, let's say, New Zealand, to suddenly being some big, poobah in some unregulated slush fund foundation with all these special envoy titles to the UN and other things like the WHO. That can make sense, a lot of sense, particularly if you're a prime minister out of power in your 40s or 50s or whatever, with multiple decades ahead of you. So it's easy to see why these smaller nations, and even Germany, which is a very big economy, it's a tiny fraction of the U.S. economy when you focus on its internal consumption, its household consumption, which is the biggest piece of our economy, and it's not the same percentage size inside Germany's economy. So these smaller economies and politicians in them, they love globalism.
Yeah.
Because they especially love unregulated globalism, because all these ventures are so impossible, so difficult for regulators in any one country to think about. And there are no regulators for the global economy. By design, there are none.
I think it's also worth noting, Charles, that New Zealand, because of its geography and, just obviously where it is so isolated that I get a real sense that people are kind of duped by the Clintons, because and people have been telling me that it's only in the last, recent years with the advent of the internet, which I've had a lot of problems with the internet in New Zealand, but that's bringing information to New Zealanders much more quickly than ever before. And I think they're getting up to speed. But historically speaking, I would say there was just everything about it is isolation in New Zealand. So it seems ripe for someone like Hillary Clinton to take advantage of.
Exactly. And of course, that's the problem with these presidential foundations, because people wrongly assume that there's a vetting process to get atop the very largest economy in the world as president for 2 terms. People assume that you've been vetted, checked.
Yeah.
And they assume that, if there's a problem with this foundation, maybe it's a typo, maybe it's an accounting technical glitch. But, as a former president, people must be helping him get it right. And they suspend they willingly suspend the natural tendency to disbelieve, to be cynical. They say, no, this man is, fantastic. And then this fraud just gets bigger and bigger as the Clintons and the Bushes and now the Obamas wrap all these people into it. You get to a place where you can't admit you've been defrauded. So that lends credibility to the fraud.
And I am seeing elements of the globalist control. I don't know if you got I know you're very busy. I don't know if you got a chance to see any of the videos I've been posting through the week, but I met with our new friend, Jordan Williams at the New Zealand Taxpayers Union, and he seems to be one of the only people I'm seeing who's getting out there in the media and spreading the word about the Clinton Foundation. We had a very good conversation. I hope that we can have him on the show in the future so that he can share some of his insights about the unique nature of New Zealand life and how taxpayers are being taken advantage of there. And you can share information that he may not have about the Clinton Foundation, et cetera. But I also went to the Dominion Post, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, newspaper in Wellington, and one of their reporters just had no idea what I was talking about with this, and they didn't seem to want to be reporting on anything other than the Clinton Foundation being great. They didn't even know that an additional 5.5 million New Zealand dollars have just been committed last week to the Clinton Foundation. So there's this reboot being planned, right, in New York or something like that, and they're going strong. They don't seem to care. They're just doubling down on the fraud.
Well, yeah, I mean, Hillary Clinton at this late stage is still playing identity politics, and it's no coincidence that she went down to New Zealand, now run by I think a 38-year-old woman.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Australia had been run by a woman, and she's trying to make the case. Look, you countries have had woman leaders, but not in America. There's got to be a problem with America. No, we don't have a problem with female leaders. We have a problem with crooked leaders.
Exactly.
And we especially have a problem with crooked female leaders who've enabled the crooked behavior of a crooked husband through his whole crooked career.
I've been getting a lot of good firsthand insight from locals on. I feel badly. I forget the name of the sitting prime minister, but 37, I believe, is actually how old she is. And one person I spoke to expressed concern that she's pregnant right now and she's going to be a first-time mother. And nothing to do with being a woman, but just the fact is, when you have a brand new baby, that's a lot of responsibility and takes a lot of your time. And the notion that you're going to run a country and have this first baby, that's a lot to handle.
Yeah, she'll do fine. Yeah. Presumably, she has lots of help. And,
yes.
So Joyce.
Sorry, Joyce.
Yeah. So on the cover, the bottom of this cover, I talk about the fact that this largest unprosecuted charity fraud in history. This did not happen by accident. So as you in the viewership consider these our presentation today, and ideally look carefully at the slides that we prepared for you, ask yourself how many different former presidents and their allies and professional advisors got involved destroying federal records or monetizing them to write their books, have their speeches, do their ventures. How many former presidents got in on this whole deal from 1988 forward? I don't think we could say that Jimmy Carter is involved monetizing the Carter Center, although I could be shocked. I haven't looked at it closely. I mean, he seems to be more involved with charity, true charities. And obviously, Ronald Reagan isn't doing any of that. So
pushing up daisies.
That's right. But I think as we get into this, how many people around George H.W. Bush, around George W. Bush? We know Bill Clinton's the epicenter. He's the fraud king of the millennium when it comes to charities. And we can assume that his wife is happy to benefit from it. The only question there is how deeply involved was she in the post-presidency period of the charity fraud when it escalated so much. So that's what we're going to be talking about in some depth today. We can go to the next page if you like, Jason.
Sure.
And rip through that one. This is our standard disclaimer. I'll cover this quickly, but for the new viewers in particular, we have an absolute First Amendment right to express our views, and we don't like to just sit on a soapbox and start spouting things off. What we do first is we consider the facts and the evidence. Now, with the Clinton Foundation, it's very tough to find the real evidence because the one place you won't find it is on their website. I
Right.
mean, they do their level best to make sure that as much incriminating information is not, and crucially important information, is not actually on their website. So what we do for you is we've been scouring now for 3 years, over 3 years, the various files, and it's really coming together nicely. It's getting organized. I want to give a shout out to somebody. I won't say where this person is, but there's somebody, Jason, who very kindly has been working, and I think I don't say the person's name, but who's been helping us get a file together that people can access of all our presentations and as many of these appearances around on the subject of the Clinton Foundation as possible. This person's doing really first-class work, and it will be continually updating what we do. So thank you very much for that. And here, what we do on the disclaimer page is we point you to, as much as possible, the primary evidence and the analytical reports that we have used throughout this long journey. Jason, I think we're close to 75 shows at this point.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of material out there on just what you and I have done. And then, of course, you do a tremendous amount of stuff as well, which we're probably going to have to get organized even better. But you've done a fantastic job putting this playlist together. And we're going to be refreshing the playlist in time. On my site, I have not really been updating that much. But this playlist, I think, is very useful, at least to me personally. We may have to check some of the, I'm getting some feedback that some of the presentations may not still be up there, but we'll go back and check.
Someone told me that as well. There was something happening where the URLs were getting truncated. I have to look at that. It's leading to the wrong, I'm not sure why that's happening, but I will fix that. And also there's one show that I need to add to this. I've been very busy traveling around, Charles. I apologize. I will update that playlist.
No, I mean, I look at this as somebody who knows nothing about the entertainment business, and I say to myself, in a short period, in less than a year, Jason, you have managed to build a tremendous repertoire of impactful, hard-hitting, helpful, investigative journalism in a different format, taking advantage of the medium highly efficiently. And thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Charles, and thank you for your assistance. I think I also like to always remind people that they should follow you on Twitter, because there are always new people joining us each week, and if they don't know about your Twitter page, they can find you there at Charles Ortel, and of course also your main website, charlesortel.com. And those are two good resources for people who enjoy Sunday with Charles to keep up on all the various Charles Ortel related media and information.
Well, thank you very much for that, Jason. So why don't we jump into the next page? Just reviewing quickly what actually did seem to happen in the last week or so, because there's a tremendous amount of stuff that's been happening. And I will tell you, Jason, which ones we should pull up.
Sure.
So that you don't have to pull them up. So there's been a lot in the news, and we don't need to pull up this first slide about the Korean Peninsula. And, I'm actually getting very tired of even thinking about watching mainstream news anymore, because you get blowhard after blowhard, pounding the table. Say, oh, Donald Trump is he's gonna blow up the world with nuclear war with Rocket Man. He's an idiot, And then then when he does something that none of these geniuses, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, H.W., none of these people could handle Rocket Man or his father or grandfather. Yeah. Suddenly Trump comes in, not even with a full complement of staff. Remember, he does not. He's been lambasted for not having filled out his foreign policy team. He had the flirtation, or he worked with Rex Tillerson. That didn't go as well as he liked, so he brings in a new person. Mike Pompeo was not even technically Secretary of State when the gigantic breakthrough was made on the secret trip where he met with Kim Jong-un. So, I'm sick and tired. I don't mind, interacting with people whose minds will never be changed. I do that I try to speak to people like that once every 1,000 years.
Outside of Barnes and Noble.
Exactly. But, I mean, come on. Let's be honest that multiple presidents have identified the formerly completely rogue regime in North Korea as one of the top existential threats to peace in the region, the Asian region, but now more recently with the longer range missiles, even threatening American territories, even threatening potentially the Pacific coast of America. So to see a president take on everything that he's taking on at once and then actually make this kind of progress, I think, whether the deal comes together or not, at least he's not going to rope us into a horrible deal, which is the Iran deal. We can talk about that a little bit. But, they're in the news, and I didn't put this link up, they're in the news. Apparently the Iranians are threatening to name the names of the people they bribed in the West to get this stupid agreement, executive agreement, across the line that Obama signed and that the Europeans are prancing around claiming is a fantastic success, because by claiming it's a success, they can get a share of the $150 billion that was unlocked and the proceeds of higher oil prices for their various companies. I mean, I think Donald Trump, enough of all the negative stuff. The media now, I think Donald Trump has put the mainstream media in a very dangerous place, and in academia in a dangerous place, where they are actually looking more and more foolish every day for being so blindsided in their hatred of somebody who's actually doing the world a tremendous favor, and by the way, is not taking a salary for his work. Now, we can debate whether he should, I've said he should put his assets in a blind trust. He doesn't listen to me, but and for that he's getting some flack that he hasn't done that. But, this is a man in his early 70s who is making enormous sacrifices and actually making progress. And while you've been away, Jason, the mainstream press is still not learning.
Yeah.
And then we have the second link again, and we don't need to pull that one up either. Apparently, I want to make sure I got this right. No, it's not true pundit, but apparently Mueller, when he invited the Russian trolls, indicted the Russian trolls.
He invited
Turns
them.
out, he invited and indicted. But he apparently indicted a company that didn't exist at the time of the alleged criminal activity.
That's typical.
And well, I mean, this is really shameful. I mean, it's just you know how when somebody is so negative or so positive on something, you lose credibility unless you can put out a preponderance of evidence that supports why you're trying to make a lay-down case. Mueller has given no evidence of any collusion yet. It will be a year through it on the 17th, May 17th, next week. A year of this, and he's got bupkis.
How that man has any legitimacy whatsoever is a mystery to me.
Well, see, I think they were very successful in the sting of creating the idea that Donald Trump was an illegitimate president from the start. So many people have lost so much money backing the second failed presidential campaign of Hillary Clinton. They needed a fall guy. They needed somebody to blame. So they whipped these idiots into a frenzy. And in that frenzy, Donald Trump understood and still understands that he doesn't yet even now have control of the executive branch. There are a lot of people who are diehard globalists stuck into the executive branch, and he had to tread carefully. So in that environment, Mueller was able to be appointed. I don't see the rationale for him being appointed. I think history will show when we get into this, the lawyers and the judges get into it, that Mueller should have had specific crimes identified, and he didn't do that. Rosenstein, I think, should not have appointed him. But Mueller's credibility is crumbling. And then we turn to the great Hillary Clinton, who on these speaking tours she really should cut out the drinking on her speaking tours, especially when she flies all the way out to Australia and New Zealand. I've never done it. It's a long trip. It's got a bit hard on her. And she's just spouting nonsense in these speeches. I gather she didn't even show up for the cocktail party she was supposed to show up, where you might have been there.
Well,
Um,
again, I was led to believe, and several of the people that I spoke there were also led to believe by the language of the web page that was selling these VIP tickets that she would be there, at least to give a speech. There was a stage within this like sort of small party room that I thought she would come out and say something to all of us and at least enter the room. And I felt pretty gypped by that, as did other people.
or maybe you're better off.
Yeah. And you
I
know,
mean,
Charles,
you
another
lost.
thing that I found very surprising was she was openly insulting. I think she called Donald Trump a creep on stage. And we've got this long-standing tradition of like not directly insulting the sitting president when you're a former president or someone at that high level in government, and that's just out the window.
Right. Well, and people fairly say that Donald Trump is shredding all kinds of precedents, but I think the precedent you're referring to is that politics in America was supposed to end at the water's edge. That is to say, when you have these former presidents, presidential candidates going around the world, they're supposed to support the sitting president.
Yeah.
And not engage in a negative lecture series,
Right.
or just hurling insults like a little school kid.
Yeah.
So this period here has really diminished Hillary Clinton's stature enormously. I just, in preparing for this, another piece that I'm working on, I went back over the timeline on the contested campaign in 2000, the election, and there the Supreme Court rendered its decision, which paved the way for George W. Bush to be inaugurated. They rendered that decision on the 12th of December 2000, and the next day, Al Gore said, George W. Bush is the legitimate president of the United States. End of discussion.
Right.
Right? Now, I don't hold Al Gore up as a model for much, but Hillary isn't even performing at the Gore standard.
Yeah.
I mean, she's performing at the mega bore standard.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
turning then, this is just a quick thing, and I think we'll only pull up the last link at the very end.
Well, can I just, I hate to distract, but I do want to show you this item. Thomas Paine of True Pundit earlier had tweeted something about Hillary meeting with Daniel Andrews over there in Australia, and she's been appearing with these neck scarves apparently to cover some kind of back brace, and in this photo she looks just remarkably stiff, and I had commented that it's reminiscent of Star Trek's Captain Pike, where it's just a head sticking out of this device.
And we will not joke around any variances of Captain Pike with a different person. And we're not going to get there. So that's very good, Jason.
Yeah.
So just turning back then to the slide,
Yes.
there was chatter towards the end of the week that Nunes and Gowdy, Chairman Nunes and Chairman Gowdy, may have been able to see the electronic communication that gave rise ultimately to the scope memo for the Mueller investigation. But this is a piece which explains that didn't really happen. That they have not yet. Rosenstein's still playing everybody, and this is that conservative treehouse, I think. And we need to follow that very, very closely. It is just, I'm not going to negotiate with a thief about whether I should get some of my money back. I mean, you're either a co-equal branch of government charged with oversight duty, which Nunes and Gowdy, one of them is intelligence, one of them is oversight, do have valid, long-standing oversight powers. And there was a retired FBI man on early this morning that I happened to be up watching, who was explaining that prior to September 11th, 2001, the FBI, in his mind, had never brought congressional oversight to a place where it needed to be subpoenaed. It had always cooperated with Congress. But after September 11th, 2001, this person was arguing, I don't know if he's correct, this was his argument, that things have changed, and the FBI has gone apparently from being principally a fact-finding and law enforcement agency to being a mixture of that alongside providing intelligence assessments. And that's a dangerous mulligatawny stew. to put those two things together. So
I like
I'm
the
hopeful.
Lamb reference.
Yeah. So moving quickly, then the great Tom Fitton and his team have discovered that after having been told twice that there were no more documents on the Lynch-Clinton tarmac meeting in Phoenix, suddenly, lo and behold, there are. But those are not going to come forward yet for a bit. So that's a very significant development. That Tom Fitton does yeoman's duty, um, and here he's being stiff-armed. Then, in the case of the final one I wanted to pull up. I don't know if that's the Chuck Grassley one. I guess I had it wrong. It's not Tom Fitton. It's the other group. But the bottom one is a pile driver. Chuck Grassley is, I hope he has many more years in the Senate. I believe he's 84 years old, but I may have that date wrong. He's certainly in his 80s. I thought he was 84. But this is an article which explains that either Friday or Saturday, Chuck Grassley absolutely nailed the FBI and is demanding that an agent whose name has not been identified before sit down with his committee, I think within a week. And this is somebody who may have already been cooperating, maybe already be a cooperating witness.
Wow.
Exposing the significance of what was really going on. And some are taking this action, the exposure of the man's name, as a clear sign that the Horowitz report is very close to dropping, because they wouldn't have exposed this name if it was months away. And that that the Horowitz report is going to be, some say, a lot worse than, a lot tougher on the FBI, in particular on Comey. I hope it's also very tough on the people who, in theory, were doing the investigation of the Clinton Foundation, because I think the mishandling investigation and the Clinton Foundation investigation are tied. So yeah, I guess there's three more things here. Okay, so there are also signs that the Obama administration may have been coordinating its assaults against Trump with Schneiderman. I didn't realize this, that Schneiderman had been given the task in 2013 of trying to go after the big banks, which makes sense because the New York State Attorney General has special powers to go after banking institutions because so many of them are headquartered in New York. And so the process wherein Holder and then Lynch would hold up these banks, and instead of punishing them as severely as I might have punished them, they concoct these solutions wherein the banks would have to pay large sums of money into what? Foundations, social justice foundations, other big amounts of money, hundreds of millions of dollars or more. So there are signs of that. And there's, the one where it says there's no more double standards. That link, if you can pull it up, Jason, it shows that a low-level person is pleading guilty here for mishandling classified information to a far smaller degree than we will soon see Hillary Clinton did during the time that she was Secretary of State and then afterward. Here's somebody actually pleading guilty, which is a sign, I think, that we may be further along than others believe.
The floor at the CIA is always nicely waxed.
So the final on this page, the Zero Hedge had a great article. It's dated at this point. It's I think over a day old. That talks about how Strzok and Kerry and others in the FBI, possibly in the CIA and the State Department, were actually setting traps for the Trump team, both in transition and then as they took over. And I think that's the kind of behavior that is just so wrong that it needs to be fully exposed. And those who may have done this need to be severely punished so that there's a clear precedent set. You don't do what Team Obama did on the way out the door after they failed successfully, I would argue, to rig an election, rig primaries and rig an election and install somebody they were pretty sure would be complicit in covering up all of their misdeeds. You can't just let this go unpunished.
Right.
So if we go to we should go to the next page. Now, here what I've done to make it easy for the viewership. We're not going to read every one of these words, even many of the words, but I've set this up in a way so that in your own time, when you download these slides and follow these links, you can have access to enormous amounts of information. And we won't pull up many of the links, but the first long link there is a link to the Domestic Investigative Operations Guide for the FBI. It is a 690, I guess you did pull it up, thank you. It's a 698-page document. And it is very clear. This is the FBI that I believe does exist, that is extremely well organized, that has thought through the many different ways in which investigations may proceed, has learned from mistakes. This is a guide that is updated periodically. I don't know if this is the most recent one or not. It was published, I think, put up in 2013. So it certainly would have been in operation during the time after Hillary Clinton left. And when you look at this thing, particularly when you look at the different categories of processes, there's the first level, which is just an assessment. Then there's a preliminary investigation. Then there's a full-on investigation. And there are special rules that apply to politically sensitive investigations, which all of these certainly were. We're talking here about a highly political family that either was in power or was destined to or trying to regain power. And you look at what the FBI says in the rule book it's supposed to do, and you then compare it to what is now in various files, and it's just crystal clear that higher-ups in the FBI and people above them gamed these investigations, all of them. And that the real thing that needs to be thought through here, maybe there's statute of limitations issues and you can't go after all this. Maybe there aren't. Maybe it was a conspiracy. Maybe it's a continuing conspiracy, so you can go back all the way in time if you want to. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But in terms of learning from our mistakes and learning how to do better, this is a process that, we'll see just how thorough Horowitz is. If he hasn't gone down this road, he's not thorough enough. So quickly, what I do here is I provide links to 3 investigations we've talked about in the past. There's the Presidential Foundation investigation, and it's just crystal clear. When you look now, there are 3 parts of that link. Please don't pull the link up.
Sure.
And there are 3 parts there. When you go through that stuff in detail, it is crystal clear to me that by around October 2001, certainly by then, the correct name of this thing was the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, had certainly engaged by then in substantial unauthorized activities, which only continued to escalate, all the while the FBI and Comey and Mueller and Rosenstein were supposedly investigating this, and they couldn't find the obvious. That's the headline here. How could these 3 people, have been so directly involved in an investigation that missed the beginning steps of a very large fraud then that has since become and morphed into the largest set of prosecuted charity frauds in the world? How could these people have missed that? And then what bunch of lame-brained knuckleheads said the people who ought to investigate what happened in the election are the very people who stand to be exposed the most if there's any serious investigation into this rigging of the 2015-2016 election and prior steps. How is it these very same people ended up in control, or literally in control or allied to, this rogue investigation gone off the rails that's currently, in quotes, led by Mueller? Yeah. Then you go to this thing we've talked about it ad nauseum, Hillary Clinton, the second one, the mishandling investigation. And I repeat, as I have before, Hillary Clinton and her team have been dissembling and distracting and lying, characterizing that the investigation was not a matter when it was a full-scale investigation, characterizing this as being a, quote, matter that is a normal security review involving all former secretaries of state. It's just a bold-faced set of lies. And you have before you at that link, and please don't pull it up, you have 21 parts, thousands of pages of documents that explain crisply that by on the 10th of July 2015, that is to say, before the primaries began, when Bernie Sanders still had a chance, the FBI did indeed open a full-scale and sensitive investigation into Hillary Clinton and her associates and the degree to which they may have mishandled classified information. And it's there for you to see, right? So, in my mind, how did a sitting president, a president-elect, and then a sitting president of the United States, Barack Obama, how did that president and his team allow Hillary Clinton to break precedent and handle all of the Secretary of State business, which is federal record stuff, using unsecure servers and certain unsecure electronic devices, and then to walk off the job on February 1st, 2013, with all this information, and only eventually give it back in 2014 at the end of the year, towards the end of the year. I mean, who authorized that? There've got to be records somewhere of the decision-making process. Did anybody complain about this? It was a big departure from the way in which things have been happening under George W. Bush. Is there nobody in the State Department who looked at this and said, wait a minute, you can't do this?
There is.
And I just got,
Didn't they tell her that she couldn't do it?
No, well, we'll get to that in a second, according to her.
Right.
So there's just a tremendous amount of information here in the file, in the second FBI file. And on the right, I talk about the fact and provide a link to Bill and Hillary Clinton's tax returns. And without going into the minutia that we will go into, it is crystal clear that between as far back as they go through 2000, that the Clintons derived very little in the way of business income because they met at Yale. I have great reverence for Yale, but I think they didn't go to Yale Law School. I think they went to Yale Lie School, which must be on a side street around the corner. Because, the headline here is that while they were in government service, they made nothing in the way of business income. They had basically no business experience. So tell me, please, how from 2001 forward, an overwhelming majority of their income in all those years, well over 50% of their income, is characterized as being business income. Now, did they instantly become business geniuses with no experience, just being political hacks? Or is that all the evidence you really need when you think about it to say what these people were doing all along is monetizing their public service? They're using the Clinton Foundation and other charities and their contacts and their various campaigns as a way to monetize the contacts they derived through their, quote, service.
Charles, we haven't even monetized this YouTube channel, and the Clintons are monetizing their political service.
I know. I mean, who knows? They're probably selling tickets to these performances for all we know.
They are. I just bought one.
That's true. So the third investigation is this Weiner Aberdeen search warrant that the New York office of the FBI had that laptop apparently, or knew about it in September of 2016, but they only grudgingly got the search warrant on October 27th, 2016, scant days before the election. So there you have the whole. We've gone over that in some depth, but when we think about that particular thing, how did the FBI so quickly vet what are in some places said to be 650,000 messages and emails that were found on that laptop and clear Hillary belatedly right before the election? How did they do that? The answer is they didn't do that. And Horowitz's report better addressed what was really going on there and what's on that Weiner Aberdeen laptop. So when we think about the number of people, we look at Comey's book deal. how much of that book is based on information that he shouldn't have walked out off the property with? It seems that a lot of public servants get to keep their valuable documents, use them as grist for their books and their speeches or whatever. And another thing that we'll be getting into, not so much on this broadcast, is it seems that we still don't have an ironclad control procedure to make sure that presidential records are actually, archived properly, or at least warehoused properly, before they get transferred into these libraries. And as somebody who's never done a move as big as a presidential library, but I've done large moves, it is so easy for things to go astray in a move. Collecting the documents, turning them from the offices into the archives, making sure that the archives transfer them, nothing gets lost in the transfer, nothing gets destroyed, nothing gets diverted, nothing gets sent to out of harm's way so that no critic will ever see it. And then when it's in the warehouse, who's watching the watchman at the warehouse to make sure that 2 o'clock in the morning, Sandy Berger isn't in there stuffing documents down the bed. So we'll be getting into that in some depth. If we go to the next page,
yep.
I'm really going to fly through this because there's quite a bit of information up here that you can read at your leisure. But what we do here, I have excerpted on these next 4 slides certain passages from the 11-page supposed transcript of Hillary Clinton's interview, the interview having occurred on July 2nd, 2016. And when I look at it now calmly and objectively, what I see are very clear arguments why Hillary Clinton certainly was not qualified to be president of the United States based on her, quote, experience, as she explains, what was going on under not even harsh questioning. I don't think she was questioned in this session under oath. I don't think she certainly was not aggressively questioned at all. But yeah, this is on, I think, page 2. There's 11 pages of material here, and I think I provided a link, or I did provide a link to the Hillary R. Clinton investigation. This is part 2 of that 21-part thing. It's an 11-page document, and here we see in the first paragraph an email dated 1 July 2012, which appears to have been from the president's email address. And you see him using, ObamaEmail.com. No, he's using whatever moniker he had at WHO White House office, probably executive. I don't know what it is. Executive office president.
But
whatever
is right there.
Yeah, but he's using a real and it seems that this email that was sent, Hillary saying, well, I don't really remember, I get a lot of emails from the president. Oh, really? So where are all those emails? Because I haven't seen many emails at all in all of her work-related emails that were, in fact, turned over.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So if you don't get that many from the president, that's very interesting. What exactly were you doing as Secretary of State? Were you, not talking to your boss at all?
But you know what, Charles? You just said something that sticks in my mind. That phrase, work-related emails, sounds very much to me like something that a lawyer told her to say, and don't deviate from that phrase because that's a phraseology that will cover everything and not get you in trouble kind of thing.
Right. Well, that's why I put a great partner here in this venture, my friend, because that's exactly why I get to the next paragraph. She says in questioning, did she get any training? And here she, with a straight face, she tells the FBI, the world's premier investigative service. Of course, Peter Strzok was asking the questions. He probably was busy texting Lisa Page at the time.
Stroking her.
But I'm not going there. But she's with a straight face, again, not under oath. She tells the FBI, that she didn't get any briefing or training relating to the retention of federal records. So she obviously, is such a genius that she must know. I just put 3 different bodies of law that I believe pertain here. One is the Federal Records Act, which generally makes it a very bad thing to destroy records. And then there's the Presidential Records Act, which is even tougher on presidential records, of which she was dealing primarily with presidential records. And then there's this Foreign Agents Registration Act, which obviously she must believe does not apply to her. or to Bill, or to Chelsea, or to anybody in the Clinton Foundation. So she mouths these answers, which are so crazy. He's asked, did she know, and then below that little table, did she know that she was basically had the power to classify or declassify documents of the State Department? She said, I don't remember. Wait a minute. You were running the Secretary of State at the State Department for 4 years, and you don't remember whether you had original classification authority.
Well, to be fair, Charles, her head is held on with a bandana, so it's possible that she might forget these things.
And then I'm told that I've got to believe, knowing the way large bureaucracies handle things, I don't know intimately, I've got to believe that there are known levels of classification. And then there's stuff that's so super duper secret that they don't even want to admit that it's classified or whatever. But one of the highest levels of classification, I'm told, forgetting about whether they're unknown, even higher ones, is this special access program level.
Right.
And she's saying she could not recall any specific briefing. Now, as a senator, you're not going to get into anywhere near the same level of information that you do sitting on top of the primary part of the federal government that is charged with all international relations of our country. The FBI, the CIA is not supposed to be operating inside the United States. We do our spying and our intelligence classified work principally relates, I'm sure there's a lot inside, but by number and by number of subjects, it's got to mostly be international work. You're telling me that it's just a junior senator from New York. You felt you didn't need to get any special briefing on how classification should work and these different issues as you then traveled around the world, more than any other Secretary of State, and all these different things using private servers that were not secure, using electronic devices that you bought on eBay. You're telling me you didn't feel it was a good idea to maybe have some pro tell you how to protect yourself? It does speak to intelligence, but what it speaks to me most of all as somebody who thinks about this kind of stuff a lot, it speaks to their risk, their propensity to take risk. This is a risk-seeking person.
When you say it speaks to intelligence, Charles, you're talking about CIA-type intelligence or Hillary Clinton is a dunce-type intelligence?
The latter.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like she's a reality show host who started running for president. She's supposedly the smartest lawyer in the world. Right.
Exactly. So, whipping along here, this basically tells me these interviews, belatedly circulated as they have been, this interview, and the summary of it, tells me a lot more about her risk, her ability to embrace risk, and also the fact that she believes she's entitled. She literally felt that she was, I think, feels that the election of 2008 was stolen from her, that she could have easily beaten McCain, she should have been the nominee, and now that this happened again. She feels she's risk-prone and she's entitled. And somebody like this cannot be immune from prosecution. You cannot let this kind of stuff slide because there are other people who are risk-prone, waiting in the wings. Most of them are in this resistance movement and in academia getting ready to follow the lead of the Clintons and follow the lead that Obama seems to be taking with his foundation. And we cannot let this stand. So some more examples. In red, what I try to do, she basically said, well, everyone at State knew that she had a private email address. Now, that's a statement that is a dangerous statement to make. There are a lot of people at the State Department.
Yeah.
Right? So she was sure that every single person at the State Department knew she had a private email address. But then when asked about this whole thing, she did not explicitly request permission to use a private server or email address. So that means, either that Barack Obama's team and Hillary Clinton had an agreement that, she could do whatever she wanted with the State Department and didn't have to ask permission to do anything, which says something about Barack Obama's leadership, right?
Yeah.
Or, it's preposterous. I mean, This is a gigantic risk here.
Couldn't she just be
And
saying that to kind of try to like pressure or implicate other people to like, you knew, you're in trouble too, or something like that?
she could be, but remember the setting. She's, before all these FBI people, she's not under oath. She should have been under oath. There should have been a serious set of questions, and hopefully those will come soon. It's just mind-numbing to me.
Yeah.
And Horowitz better tell us who, in his report, who authorized this setup and how much of a departure was it from past practice.
Yeah.
Speaking of departures from past practice, I did check this. There is normally an inspector general at the State Department, but the inspector general at the State Department disappeared under Bush on
Really?
January 15th, 2018. Guy retired and he wasn't replaced.
Whoa.
And there was no inspector general during Hillary Clinton's entire period as Secretary of State. And that's
Wow.
ridiculous.
That is.
That is absolutely, who made that decision?
Maybe
You know,
Hillary.
Well, again, how did she have the SWAT to tell the President of the United States, look, you stick to domestic stuff. You can go on international trips, but I'll arrange all those. And, I'm not going to have anybody be an inspector general overseeing this vast bureaucry of missions and consulates around the world and all this spending and all this potential for graft. It's ridiculous. It's one good thing that Kerry did do, I guess, is he acquiesced to having an inspector general at some point when he was there. And then she tries to say, with a straight face, I could just imagine the people laughing. They probably had to have like a secret handshake at this meeting where, let's not tape record this because I know you're going to laugh when I answer some of your questions. With a straight face, she says she did not have any conversations with regard to using the server to avoid the Freedom of Information Act. And if I'd been in the room, I would have been laughing for 5 minutes. No, really.
Well,
nobody's ever done this before.
But all she's saying is she didn't have conversations about it. Doesn't mean she didn't plan to do that.
Right, but you have to answer FBI questions in theory truthfully and completely. I mean, the substance of the question is, were you using, the concern was, and she is the smartest female lawyer in the world.
Right.
Were you, did you set this up with all your experience, not answering questions and having evidence missing in the past, did you set this up so that you wouldn't have to comply with a prayer request? And the answer is, of course, that's what they did. But she doesn't say that.
Right.
And then there's this mystery email on 17 June 2011 with an unstated subject line, where it appears that what she was asking this deputy, Jake Sullivan, to do, it would seem to me that what she was doing is directing him to take off the classified markings,
right,
so this thing could be transferred on a private system. Oh, no, that's not what I was doing. Well, what was happening? Sorry about that. Let's just get low on battery again. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Good, okay. So this email, 17 June 2011, is an email that happened right around the time of Skolkovo. There was a lot of things going on in Skolkovo. So I hope investigators are really going to get into the real emails and the real chronology of what was going on here. So if we go to the next page, this is hysterical, Jason. You may remember we did a show. It's linked there on one of the early first shows we did on Sunday with Charles was 27th of August 2017.
Yep.
Had to do with the Clinton business model, where we focused on the situation in Malawi.
Right.
And this is an email where she's trying to get off explaining what was really going on the 9th of April 2012. Now, I don't yet know. She's trying to say, well, what did this C marking mean on the email that you have here? Of course, it meant that it was a confidential classification. Well, I think that's the alphabetical order of the paragraph. That's does her best John Lovitz.
Yeah, that's the ticket.
Yeah. Anyway, but at this time, Malawi had descended into, complete corruption, and afterwards, there's now arrest warrants. We provide links out to, against this Joyce Banda and her, maybe against her crooked foundation, the Joyce Banda Foundation.
Right.
And, no one seems to be interested at the New York Times in investigating why the partner in the Clinton Foundation in Malawi and Rwanda is the Hunter Foundation, and the most significant independent trustee of the Hunter Foundation is Maggie Haberman's father-in-law, Vartan Gregorian. And he's been involved with this whole thing. As a Hunter Foundation, in my mind, is not as advertised. It's certainly the Clinton Hunter Initiative is certainly not validly organized in any country. And we now see Barack Obama's foundation, going full bore to emulate the Clinton Foundation's poor practices, embracing contact with the Hunter Foundation. There's a link that we provide down below. But so if we go to the final page here on Hillary, she claims with a straight face that with regard to preservation or production of records during the transition out of her role as Secretary of State in early 2013, she received no instructions from anybody. It's like, okay, Hillary, you get the State Department, whatever you want to take.
Furniture.
You're only making a small amount of money. Just walk out with whatever you want.
That's her standard policy, I think, right?
Well, Mr. President, I've had Dennis Cheng, vacuuming up all the records possible down in our secret New York office on 77 Water Street since July of 2011. I don't know how much more I could take, sir. I've been taking
the furniture and all that. I could picture Hillary Clinton loading up her suitcase with toilet paper from a hotel when she leaves.
I think she'd be starting in the liquor cabinet, but...
Whoops. You just went sideways, Charles.
Which way?
You flipped vertical. There we go. Problem solved. Sort of.
Okay. Strange, because on my phone I'm now vertical, and the other. Anyway, going back into this, she says, she's shown an email on the 26th November 2010. Now remember, this interview occurred on the 2nd of July 2016. She's shown an email dated 26th November 2010, asked about it, and then she says with a straight face, Clinton did not know why it was not in the approximately 30,000 records produced to State, and based on its content, would expect it to be considered work-related. So here's one work-related email that she did not turn over. I'm sure there are many more than one.
Yeah.
But and nobody asked any follow-up questions. And they allowed, during a very short interview, all of her lawyers, the Kendall we know about, Catherine M. Turner's was a partner at Williams & Connolly, may still be. Cheryl Mills is her longtime fixer.
Yep.
Heather Samuelson was at State and then a lawyer, and then some one unidentified person. We know that there were two unidentified special agents doing the questioning, but we also know that Peter Stroke and David Laufman, I think Laufman may also have gone subsequently, were in that room. And we know that Stroke was a, Clinton-loving, Trump-hating
texter.
Dude.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand, looking at the policies and procedures that are followed, and given the long history here, how many different problems have occurred with the Clintons, how many investigations, why did they get such lenient treatment? So if we go to the next page. This is just to refresh people's memory of the timeline. You can't look at these incidents in isolation. You got to look at the whole long timeline. And the problems were bad, frankly, in the very beginning when she negotiated the MOU and started on January 21st, 2009. But by the 1st of February 2013, that's when they walk off the property, retaining all of these presidential and other records in their secret servers. I would argue that's when they have serious liability, criminal. And then they decide to rename the William J. Clinton Foundation on April 9th, calling it Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation. At another moment, I'll go through in depth and explain why that is not lawful. This thing was supposed to be a presidential records thing. It is not the Clinton family tour around the world for fun foundation. And then on the 2nd of November 2013, they, without disclosing as they needed to, they illegally attempted, I say attempt because I don't think the way in which they did it will pass muster as having been lawful in the end, should this ultimately be prosecuted. They attempted to seize control over the foundation. You're not allowed to do that as a public charity. They did it nonetheless. And at this time, they still have all these private confidential records. They only turn over the records 13 months later, after the 2nd of November. They turn over all work-related and potentially work-related emails are given to the State Department. Hillary becomes a candidate on the 12th of April 2015. Marsha Blackburn, about a month later, the great Marsha Blackburn, demands, when she starts seeing the various things that are out there, demands that the IRS investigate the Clinton Foundation. And the IRS says, yeah, right, we're not doing it. And then the Intelligence Community Inspector General refers, having gone through these emails that were delivered on the 5th of December 2014, makes a referral to the FBI. The 10th of July, the FBI opens an investigation. And not till the 10th of September 2015 is Hillary dropped from the Clinton Foundation as a controlling Class A director. So she's running for office for 5 months, without disclosing to her donors, without disclosing to officials that she's a controlling director of a public charity, something you can't do, and something that's really, frankly, stupid to attempt doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Then, on the 16th of November, the Clinton family, in control of the Clinton Foundation, they illegally refile and amend some of their income tax documents, I would argue compounding their legal and criminal tax exposure. Then it takes until the 15th of July 2016 for Marsha Blackburn again demanding the IRS to investigate the Clinton Foundation. So what will Horowitz find should he look into the records as to what the IRS was doing to resist these valid calls, in my view, to investigate the Clinton Foundation? And instead of, going full bore after the Clintons, what does the FBI, what did the Department of Justice decide to do by the 31st of July 2016? Their genius move is to say, let's go after the Trump campaign, using the same people who are providing support in some cases, or who are leading the charge not to investigate the Clintons. So it's a complete double standard. It needs to be fully exposed. People responsible need to be aggressively investigated and then prosecuted to the full extent of the law. So, and the question is, who needs to regulate the regulators? And the answer, of course, is we the people.
Yeah.
So this is something I'm going to rush through because my battery is racing down as we speak. But I uncovered new emails in a search to prepare for this presentation today between me and Peter Smith, or really from Peter Smith to me. And
wow.
I've transcribed them here. I think people need to get their arms around them. But on the 30th of October, 2016, so in the morning, Chicago time, this is Peter to me. I didn't put an image of the email because I wanted to protect his numbers and certain things. But this is the substance of the email. I typed it out so people could read it and think about it. But it's basically saying they're moving in for the kill. And then this email, which was sent at 9:26 on the day of the election, so before it was known whether Donald Trump would be president, the FBI last evening confiscated all evidence gathered by the New York Police Department, including testimony relating to the 650,000 emails. In the process, the FBI assumed control of what was previously an investigation by the New York Police Department. Okay? So this is a very interesting email. And 1 year ago, two emails, 1 year ago, almost to the day, the body of Peter Smith was found in a hotel room out in Minnesota.
That's right.
And we get to the next page. There's additional evidence I've discovered that government authorities really need to think through carefully here. This was sent to me on the 19th of December, 2016. This is referring, his supposition is, if these missing 33,000 emails get out, many will deal with the foundation. Now, I provide to you we've done this before, but to new listeners, a link to the real memorandum of understanding that was entered into November, December 2008. And lawyers can look at that and confirm that it was a joke. It was not really meant to regulate the crucial issue of conflicts of interest and public corruption while Hillary was Secretary of State, while Bill was running the foundation. So this is a new thing I had not seen, actually, until days ago, because it was buried in a long string of emails. But he had sent me on the 19th of December 2016, so Trump is still in transition. This is really crucial stuff. Shortly after Peter formed this research operation, it's the first time I actually had ever seen the name in an email to me. It came to me, a year and a half ago. I just didn't see the name in the email. He forms it in August 2016. We came across multiple individuals who had possession of the 33,000 missing Clinton emails. None of these groups were tied to Russia as a nation state.
Wow.
We subsequently learned that WikiLeaks has been in possession of these emails earlier in 2016 and said that none of these emails came from a nation state. So this is something that government authorities need to confirm and read carefully. But it sure looks to me like Peter had been spending a lot of time on this, and that Jason, I'd just like to suggest that we consider doing a follow-on to some of the reporting you had done previously out there in Minnesota to figure out what was really going on. Peter thought he had something, and he wasn't able to get to the bottom during his lifetime. And then he dies under these mysterious circumstances. And now we learn that, what's his name? Shifty Adam Schiff has somehow obtained copies, the contents of Peter's missing laptop.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So let's have some real FBI, using the manual, some real investigation of what was going on there. So if we go to the final page.
That's bombshell, Charles.
Well, I was trying to wake you up.
I'm awake.
And I know, in view of the long time change. But
gotta get with Pepper Stanley.
So it's really time for the Inspector General to jump right into the William J. Clinton Foundation file, and I provide a link to the third part of it there. Don't pull it up.
Yeah.
But it's the Inspector General and, frankly, people in the Justice Department and the FBI should be able to look at the full records to find out what the hell was Comey, was Mueller, was Rosenstein. What were they doing when they missed the obvious Clinton Foundation investigations? Investigations of the obvious frauds. And Part 21 of the FBI Vault record is very interesting because there they discuss, on pages 228 and 229, I believe they discussed, there's a reference to 650,000, I think they call it files. And I'm wondering if that's the 650,000 emails that were on the Aberdeen laptop computer. What does the FBI know about exactly what was on that Aberdeen Wiener computer? What does the Inspector General know about all that? Now, we've talked about it, I think, I don't know if we talked about it on air, but this Clinton crime family, they cannot stop breaking the law. It's just, that's what they do.
Yeah.
And so they've circulated this idea that on May 24th, the lowest price ticket they're going to charge is $2,500 for some shindig here in New York, when they haven't corrected their filings, they haven't made crucial filings, they haven't, they're boldly out of compliance with state, federal, and foreign charity solicitation laws. They've committed, in my mind, wire fraud, bank fraud, all kinds of frauds. Yet they're going to go in New York State. I guess they figure there isn't a new attorney general yet, so that nobody will prosecute them. But, I mean, just when their tax returns are due, they're due on May 15th, either they get an extension or they file this coming week, they announced they're going to do this ridiculous idea. Then somebody, and I wrote a piece on this while you were traveling earlier, somebody floated the trial, I call it a toxic and lead trial balloon, of letting Hillary Clinton be the New York Attorney General.
Yeah.
Like, that's the idea.
No way.
And I wrote a piece about that with some references. We're going to learn whether who in the deep state planted what spies in the Trump campaign and then in the Trump transition administration. We're going to figure this out. And that sitting president of the United States team with that's not collusion. That's criminal behavior.
Yeah.
Using the power of the state to try to affect a U.S. election and install somebody who is under FBI investigation, active FBI investigation, as president of the United States is just an outrage. I mean, it makes Watergate look like, I don't know,
Liquor store robbery.
not paying for water that you drink in a free water fountain. I mean, it's ridiculous. Then we've learned, Jason, in recent minutes or hours, we've learned that the deep state may be now going after Devin Nunes, which is a sure sign that he's making progress. We have, I think, Rod Rosenstein is acting. For somebody who's been in law enforcement and justice most of his life, he's certainly behaving to me like a dirty criminal.
Yeah.
He'll every questionable contour and element of this Clinton Foundation, this handling classified information, every single part of it. There's some tie or another to Rod Rosenstein. So, I mentioned that the Clinton charities and their donors have until the 15th this week to file either a request for extensions, in which case they have to make truthful disclosures when they ask for extensions, or file their forms this coming week. And they're going to have real difficulty doing that.
Yeah, they blew that.
Yeah. And so it's really important for the government authorities around the world to look at these facts. You're not kidding anybody anymore. Now there are enough people. I see it in my Twitter feed, my following, the interchange I have with people around the world. The deep state's not going to succeed in keeping this fraud quiet. People understand it's a fraud. Serious people understand it's a fraud. It's going to get exposed. We're probably already in a place now where the populations in these countries around the world are going to start asking existing leaders and say the UK, hey, Theresa May, you're the Prime Minister of the UK. Why aren't you doing something about this? Are you thinking about setting up the Theresa May Foundation? Is that why?
No doubt. She's super rich, isn't she?
I don't think so.
Charles, we've got a message here that I think you should hear. Someone on YouTube is telling us, I am a black man. My family and friends have disavowed me because I supported Donald Trump from the beginning. I feel so vindicated. I just hope this comes out in a real meaningful way very soon. We've seen a lot of that. Racism against black supporters of Donald Trump.
It's distressing. But on that note, on that subject, I think what we're actually seeing is thinking people of all nationality or ethnic origins are saying, wait a minute, they're taking the red pill and they're saying, my goodness, I've been deceived. My family's been deceived for generations in the case of African Americans and Democrats.
Yeah.
So it's really important for government authorities to look at this evidence and do something about it. And then just a closing, what I think is going to happen, one thing that came up while you were away is that in the New York Times, of all places, this is a link to a story about the degree to which these mega players are monetizing metadata in ways you hadn't even thought about. Most people hadn't thought about. I think this whole idea of the power that Google and Facebook and Twitter and others have to use the information we willingly provide for them for free and then monetize it, I think that is going to instigate deep inquiries, particularly in the European Union, where I believe a senior person with resources is well along a process of looking at this. I think in France they're looking at this also. This is going to turn out to be a big story. So with that, Jason, I'm down to 10%. I can continue by plugging the phone in if need be. But
I think we're coming in at a good time frame here, Charles. We're at just about an hour and 30, and you covered a lot of really good material there. I do want to remind people that Crowdsource the Truth is a community-sponsored resource, and if you enjoy the programs and if you enjoy seeing me travel around the world and still come in on time for Sunday with Charles, we did have a little bit of a late start but that, time shift there, a bit of a time phone hack on the Sunday with Charles schedule. But I do want to encourage people to become sponsors of the program by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or making a one-time sponsorship payment at paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. And it's more important now than ever. We've been coming under attack from the deep state, and it was really amazing to travel around and get the firsthand insights from people in New Zealand. We're going to be doing more work with Harmon Wilfred and seeing him in his home. Posted a video about that just earlier, and it's having a great response, people getting to know Harmon better, and hopefully some of the information that he brings forward will help in draining the swamp. Charles, of course, you are doing incredible work. These emails from Peter Smith, that's never before seen on any program elsewhere. So I'm definitely going to be getting in touch with Pepper Stanley. She did amazing work. She brought forward those surveillance videos from Walmart. I believe I've mentioned this, but it's worth saying again. Someone who had access to a Walmart database and did not want to be named sent me information from that database and said that only one helium canister was in stock in that Walmart. But yet 2 helium canisters are seen in the photographs in Peter Smith's hotel room after he died. So there's so much craziness surrounding that death of Peter Smith. It's reminiscent of the hotel room where we see pictures from the Las Vegas Metro PD where Stephen Paddock died. And it's, we're really, I think, being conditioned to just accept this evidence where someone shows you something that is tangible and seems like evidence, but it's really actually just used to trick you and to bolster a false story. So I also find it remarkable, Charles, how these techniques that are being applied to unjust attacks on candidate Trump and then President Trump, and these staged crime scenes, allegedly, possibly staged crime scenes, they just run the gamut from Peter Smith, other than you knowing him personally and us exploring that, as far as the mainstream media is concerned, Peter Smith's death was a short blip on the radar. And I'll tell you what, Charles, those emails are amazing. I am going to get together with Pepper Stanley, and we're going to look into this some more. I'm going to find out what Peter Smith was onto, because he was working with guys from Google Zero, Project Zero at Google, which was a whole hacking thing. There's been a whole lot of stuff going on in the YouTube news world where QAnon has blown up and exploded, and there's some of our friends have been revealing ties to some of these basically online political opposition firms that I didn't know about before, something called Shadowbox, that is just a company of paid internet trolls that are basically openly engaging in reputation destruction, internet trolling. There actually was even a statement, Charles, made directly. Remember, we had observed in that video, Pinko Panthers, that we did, where there were 1,100 thumbs down. There was a pretty detailed conversation about people buying these thumbs down against our videos. So our suspicions were confirmed. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, keep up the great work, Jason. And this is a real honor to do this stuff with you. I think this coming week will be a week in which we're going to make a lot of progress. A lot of people have their eyes on this May 15th deadline. It would not shock me to see the more portions of the Horowitz report come out. It would not shock me to see indictments maybe even being unsealed.
Wow.
But, I think hats off to the Trump administration for trying to do so many different things at once and succeeding on so many different levels, frankly. I was briefly commenting on the fact that the African-American gentleman's comment.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party faces a very grim future as people begin to wake up and see the degree to which merchants of misery and selling, America's a miserable place, so they can continue to have these gigantic, unregulated operations where billions of dollars disappear in programs that are supposed to lift the poor out of poverty, but instead enrich political cronies and enrich the education mafia, the two-party system, et cetera. I think people are beginning to wake up to that. Whatever their ethnicity may be, their religious persuasion, we're all Americans. I think Maxine Waters was quoted saying while you were traveling, saying that she's offended when people say on the floor of the House that we want to make America great again. That offends her.
Interesting. Well, Charles, one last thing I'm going to leave you with. In an effort to bolster the crowdsourcing process relative to the work that you're describing, and I should say, I feel like I'm the one who should be thanking you for doing this great work and keeping up the great work. But when you brought that FBI manual to my attention, I found it a little cumbersome to go through. So one thing that I did that will hopefully help the crowdsourcers who want to really get into investigating this is I ran a little OCR on this document, and what it has done is that it's now created a searchable version where you can type in words like investigation, and now you can, whatever it is that you might be searching for in the document, you can go through there and very quickly find things, because it is such a dense document. The FBI posts it basically as scans into a PDF, and now I've created a searchable version of it. So when we're done with this broadcast, I'll link that so that people can download the searchable version. And as far as I know, that's not available anywhere else either. So working hard to try to bring some exclusive content to viewers of Crowdsource the Truth and Sunday with Charles.
Well, thank you for that, Jason. Now I'm getting close to critical on the battery.
Okay.
So.
All right, Charles. Well, I'll be back in New York next week, and I will see you then.
All right. Thanks again.
And thanks, everyone, for watching. See you tomorrow.